Hey there, I'm Evan, and I'm going to show you around this instrument. Anukari is a physics-based software synthesizer and effects processor, which works as a standalone instrument or as a plugin in a digital audio workstation. It functions on the principle of Newtonian physics, but what does that mean? Fortunately, it's not necessary to understand the mathematics of physics to use Anukari. Rather, you can simply picture a small metal ball suspended between two stationary posts, with rubber bands or springs. If you pull the metal ball back and release it, it will vibrate back and forth in the direction that you pull it back. The tighter you make the rubber bands or springs, the faster the metal ball will vibrate. If you make them tight enough, it can even vibrate quickly enough to make audible sound. In Anukari, since the ball and springs are virtual, you can also affect the sound by changing the mass of the ball as well as its damping, which controls how quickly the vibrations die down. Increasing or decreasing the tension of the springs increases or decreases the sound's pitch. By adjusting the tension of the springs, you can tune the system to a specific musical note. I've always thought that it would be fun to create instruments out of these building blocks of springs and masses. The idea of being able to construct a three-dimensional model of springs and masses in whatever shape I want, and then being able to connect it to a MIDI keyboard or eDrums or digital audio workstation and interact with that virtual model just seemed like a really intuitive way to create sounds. That's why I've built this initial prototype of Anukari, to explore what kind of music is possible using this kind of interactive physics simulation. I want to see if designing sounds can be tactile, kinesthetic, and playful, rather than abstract. So far, I've shown how Anukari works when interacting with it via a mouse or touchpad. Now I'll show how it can be connected to a MIDI keyboard. Each large white arrow represents the direction in which we wish to strike a particular mass when a given note is played on the keyboard. The striker has a few parameters, such as how strongly it will strike the mass, as well as the hardness or softness of the mallet's head. It also turns out that the direction of the striker matters a lot for the timbre of the sound. You've probably noticed these little red and blue arrows that I haven't explained. These represent the microphone. In Anukari, each microphone measures the vibration of a single mass. The microphones are directional. You can think of the blue arrow as the microphone's direction for the left audio channel, and the red arrow as the microphone's direction for the right audio channel. Changing these directions can change the sound quite a bit. One thing I find quite exciting about Anukari is how dynamic it is. The physics of the model you create are always being continuously simulated, and the system is not reset when you play or release a note. This means that after playing a first note, when you play the same note again, the system will be in a slightly different shape when you strike it. So you can get a lot of organic variation in the sound from something as simple as a repeated note. You're adding energy to a dynamic system, rather than triggering a sequence of rigid automations. So we see that the shape of the system when it's struck can change the sound. What's really cool is that this is something we can manipulate directly, for example, by clicking on a mass and dragging it around the screen. This kind of real-time interaction with the mouse or touchpad can be great for performing. But in the future, we will also be making this kind of movement something that you can automate, for example via parameters in your digital audio workstation. Putting everything I've talked about together, you can make instruments like this one. I've demonstrated the basics of how Anukari can be used as a synthesizer. Now I'd like to show how it can be used as an effects processor. Earlier, I demonstrated how these white arrows can represent the direction in which a mass should be struck when a note on the keyboard is played. But that's not the only way to introduce vibrations into the system you create. Another way is to apply a vibration in the direction of the arrow based on audio input. This could be input directly from an instrument or microphone. Or, Anukari could be part of a signal chain in your digital audio workstation, taking audio input, processing it, and outputting it for further processing. Here's a really simple example of a system where the white arrow is introducing vibration based on a recording of me playing guitar. The virtual microphone, represented by the blue and red arrows, is picking up the resulting vibration of the system so we can play it back. We can already hear some interesting effects going on here, with the nature of the sound changing based on adjusting the system's parameters like mass and spring tension, and the direction of the arrows. But this is a super simple system. Let's look at what a much more complex system might sound like. This system started as a rectangular grid of masses and springs, and then it was stretched out to introduce tension into the springs. Again, my guitar playing is being introduced to the system via the white arrow in the center, and in this case there are 4 microphones around the edges to pick up the resulting vibrations. And of course, this system can be dragged around and manipulated in real time just like when you're playing Anukari with the keyboard. In fact, there's nothing stopping you from combining keyboard-based strikers with audio inputs in the same system. Every feature I've demoed today are things that Anukari is capable of right now. So while this video is an early preview, I'm really excited about what's already possible. But I'm even more excited about what Anukari will be capable of by the time it's ready to be released as a full product. Thanks for watching, and please do subscribe to this channel if you're interested in seeing more demos of what Anukari can do, as well as videos covering new features as they're added.